All right, what's up, Shawn? We're back again for another episode. It was good last week. Yeah. We got our first guest on. I think it was a pretty heavy show. I think we went. We started recording like 5:30, and it was like dark at night. It was like 8 o'clock when it was done. It was good though. It's good to have a guest on.
Yeah, JB was really good, man. He's good on the mic for sure. He's definitely has some good experience to share with everybody, and I thought it went pretty well.
Yeah. It's always interesting because like you kind of want to, and I'll get to why I'm saying this too, but you kind of like a moderator. So like when you have a guest on, so you want to give them a platform, but you kind of you still have to have control of the show. And so it's like, to what degree? Because like when you bring someone on, they're super passionate about what they have to say, and they know like this is their time. But then you also want to make sure that you consider the direction of the conversation, like so it stays on track, because you know your audience. But like the person that's coming on the show, like they don't know your audience because it's not their show. So I've always found it interesting because I've done that. I've mostly done a lot of episodes just myself, like in front of the mic, and then with a buddy, just like I'm doing with you. But then having guests on, like you need a totally different skill set to do that well. And I know we're talking about moderators because we had a debate yesterday, and it's just really interesting how I think that that role is quite an interesting one.
Yeah. I mean, the moderator, in my opinion, did not do a very good job. But honestly, it's probably super hard, to keep both parties or both people, I guess, on track with the topic and not interrupting each other, especially with something so heated like the presidential campaign. So it's got to be tough for sure.
Yeah. Well, so for people listening in that might be listening, because a lot of these podcasts, man, they get listened to sometimes a year or 2 years later. Someone will hear about all your success that you're having. Man, I got to look this guy up. I got to look up Shawn, and then they see the podcast. I got to listen to all the Shawn stuff, and then like, what debate were they talking about? So this is we are in September of 2020, and we just had our first presidential debate. And obviously, for everyone that's in the country has watched it, which is a lot of people. I mean, I guess we all know here on this show how Shawn and I feel about like who should win. But I'm just kind of speaking about like from having a conversation, and you're kind of like a moderator, and you have to basically be able to set the stage properly. And I thought it was interesting because I was thinking yesterday about if I were doing it, like how to do it appropriately. I have my critiques on how it was hosted yesterday. I thought it was quite biased in one direction, but
sure.
that's my opinion. But apart from that, I was thinking about our own podcast when we have guests on. It's like, I'm always like in my mind, I'm like, okay, I got to think about timing. I got to think that the audience doesn't lose like interest. I got to make sure we stay on track. And then we have a bunch of other questions, and it's like, we got to fit it in like 45 minutes. Cause at some point, and you notice it too, even if you have the best guests on, it could be like JB, could you be myself on another show. At some point, the moderator or like the host of the show, they lose control. And I think good hosts keep control over the direction. I was thinking about that yesterday too, looking back at our first guest on, and I think people will get some value from the show, but it is long. So if you haven't listened to that one yet, it is long.
Yeah, definitely over an hour for sure. He had a lot to talk about, and he could have kept going for sure, without a doubt. But yeah, I mean, honestly, the way that, the debate went yesterday, just the moderator in general, in my opinion, was definitely, I don't know if he was like protective of Biden, but it seemed like he was leaning towards like, I don't know, I guess kind of sticking up for him. Like when Trump would jump on him, he would like either like, pause Trump or kind of divert away from that. I just thought it was kind of weird. But, if I go on Twitter or Facebook right now and I look at any, Democrat, they say the opposite. They say, it was more biased towards Trump. So
really, I've never heard anyone say that. People are saying that Wallace was biased towards Trump.
So what? Right. Yeah. So like Trump and Biden, of course, were like trending last night, and I was just browsing through Twitter, and I would just go through different people's pages to see what people were saying. And if they were Republican, it was all for Trump. If it was Democrat, it was all for. Yeah, you know what I mean. So it was like, I really don't understand how people can even like justify saying that it was for Biden. Like it was, in my opinion, it was like so lopsided. It was like Trump was almost going against two people. That's how I felt about it. But
yeah, I mean, I thought, and just quickly speaking about it, I think a lot of the questions, I think questions, and especially like take for example polling, right? So polling is all about framing. How do you frame the question? You can get the answer you want. So I think the way the moderator did it yesterday was he was framing questions to put President Trump in a position where he'd have to defend himself out of a bad situation. Because like, for example, like there was arguments about, hey, I helped build the greatest economy, and then Walz was like, actually, no, you didn't. It started during Obama. He kept doing that, and it was like really weird. It was like, and that's why Trump at some point said, I'm debating against you. And it was funny, but he was actually totally right, actually, objectively speaking. Didn't really press Biden on a lot of hot button issues. Had to talk about Trump's tax, returns, which was not part of the schedule on the debate. It was not part of the debate, and Walz brought it up, but he didn't bring up a lot of the issues that Biden has in his campaign with dealings with Ukraine, et cetera. And like Trump felt the need now to bring it up. But the problem was that Trump has 2 minutes to talk about a topic he has, but he knows that if he doesn't mention other stuff, it's not going to get mentioned. So he starts talking about like Hunter Biden, whereas he should probably defend his own record because Trump has so much to go off on. And I feel like yesterday, I feel like he didn't talk about all of his accomplishments. I think that he was focused on, he had to talk about minority communities, and all of a sudden he started talking about like the police and like Hunter Biden, and it was like and he has so much that he's done during his 4 years, and I felt like he came a little short as far as like talking about his accomplishments. But one of the benefit of the doubts I give him is that he sometimes had no choice, because you have 2 minutes, you got interrupted, by Biden, and Trump was doing his fair share of interrupting too. But then Biden wasn't getting the hard questions. And so then Trump has to be the one bringing it up. So it puts him in a difficult situation. I wasn't a fan of the debates last night. I mean, it's not Trump's forte. I don't think he practices those. I don't think anyone can teach Trump anything he doesn't want to learn, I think. But I was a little bit disappointed about how the whole thing went. So,
yeah, I will say one thing that I wish President Trump would do is, when a hot topic is brought up, or even when we have some sort of like issue with like race or riots, protests, anything like that, when he's like called upon to speak nationally at either some sort of briefing or whatever, I wish he would address it head on and not kind of like, people want to hear from him and like in a calm setting. You know what I mean? And I feel like he doesn't really do that. And who am I to say like to do something different? He's the president of the United States. He won that seat. So it's hard for me to say that, but I wish that he would, I guess, look into the camera more or something, like speak to America. Yeah. It was like he was almost just speaking to Biden. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So that was one thing that I wish he would do more of.
Yeah, and that's what Biden did well yesterday. Biden was prepared, and he would speak to the American public, and I think he did well. He would turn away. He was like, guys, this is not about me and you, me and him. It's about you. And I think he did a really good job with that. And I think he allayed some fears that people had, as like that he's, a little senile and probably has some form of like cognitive decline, which he does, I think, from all the signs I see. But yesterday he didn't have those, and I think he was just overall more prepared. I think there were some moments, and I'll point them out because some Republicans don't like to talk about this, but when Trump was pressed to talk about and denounce like white supremacists, first of all, I don't know why he was forced to do that. It's just kind of a random thing. We're talking about like riots that are going to have nothing to do with white supremacists, but and Trump didn't give a direct answer, and I don't think it's because he doesn't want to. He just like wanted to talk about something else. But Trump has such a fantastic record with race relations. And I know it doesn't, people are like, what, is that true? Trump 1 week ago, for the first time in this country, put or classified the KKK as a terror organization for the first time. And Trump did that last week. Like, he just did that, right? And he built opportunity zones. He put the KKK as a terror group. He has the massive amount of support from African Americans and minorities all the time. I'm talking about even my own minority community. Like, we're huge supporters of Trump, and like that didn't happen before in with other Republicans, right? So there just was no discussion on that, and I think that was unfortunate because the truth really is America is so polarized. If you're a Republican, you're just kind of focusing on a lot of Republican outlets. If you're liberal, you're definitely only watching liberal news. So most people that really dislike Trump, but I always ask them, have you ever seen him really speak? Like just him speak, not him framed through like a news channel? And the answer is no. So the only time we as Americans really come together and watch both candidates is during the debates. And so that's your chance to speak to like liberals and conservatives at the same time. That doesn't happen in this country anymore. So I feel like he left some things there that I hope he improves on in the next few debates. I'm actually mostly looking forward to seeing Mike Pence debate against Kamala Harris, because Mike Pence is a very good debater. He's very good with his words, and he's just very calm and collected. And I even thought last time in 2016 when he debated Kane, he wiped the floor with him, and that was the best debate, I think. And it's just not Trump's strength.
Right. Yeah, that'll be interesting. And I saw just briefly too that they're supposed to make like a whole bunch of changes. That way there wasn't so much like interrupting and things. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out for sure.
Yeah. Well, anyways, we have almost just a few days left before the election. I think it's interesting, see what's going to happen. But yeah, so actually talking about like where I was talking about moderators, we're talking about bringing guests on, and people are thinking, well, Prady and Shawn, you guys always talk about you got to be a lone wolf. You're in this alone. You might not have like a big crowd and a big group. And we believe, both of us are really big believers in individual responsibility. And this is a critique sometimes that I get is like, well, if you want an individual responsibility, you can't do everything by yourself. Though that's such a poor way of thinking at the world. And talking about politics, a few years ago, Barack Obama made a speech, which actually was made by Elizabeth Warren, and she said, you didn't build that, right? If you're successful, you didn't build it. That was Warren said it, and then Obama said it. And the point that they're making as well, there's government, there's infrastructure, and there's some truth to that, although I think it was a little bit of a strange saying. But when we're talking about personal responsibility, I don't think it means that you need to be totally alone and hate everyone else around you. I think that's that mainstream concept, like, oh, you don't have friends, you don't have any good working relationship with your employees, and that is just not true. The reason why I say that is because to have some measure of success, no matter how much of a individualistic person you are, you need people around you to capitalize and to act as a catalyst for your growth. And I want to talk about that a little bit. We talked before about having the right group and why that's important, but I think I want to delve a little bit into just vetting. And like, once you've decided that you need people, how do you vet them? How do you know who's right and wrong to come into your life? And like, what are some of the things like when you think about hiring, or when you're, I don't know, if you're listening right now, you're in, I have a couple of people that wrote some reviews who are in college, who are listening to us, and said, I'm a freshman in college. So now you're going to make friends in college. Like, you need friends, right? So like, what do you, like, who do you let in? So I want to hear from you about that as well. I'll share some personal anecdotes. So yeah, let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, for me, hiring my first employee, I kind of looked for somebody with the same value. Well, first of all, it was somebody that I knew through somebody else. So I knew of him, but I didn't know him personally. But I heard good things about him as far as how he was in school and things like that. But I knew him, or I seen him at the gym a few times before I hired him. But we kind of just had the same views for working out and things like that. But once I started talking to him more at the gym, we kind of had the same values, I guess, as far as delivering on customer service and being very reputable with customers and really delivering on that. So basically, how did I bring that up with him? When he was working out at the gym that I went to, he used to buy from our store, and that was before he worked for me. So he saw how I treated him, and that's kind of what attracted him to my store. And that once I put out there that I was looking to hire somebody, he let me know, and I talked to him a few times beforehand. But that's really what got his attention, was how I treated him as a customer, how I treated everybody the same for the most part, depending on certain circumstances. But in general, that's really what got his attention once I said I was hiring.
Right. So I guess like what I'm hearing from you is like some sort of similar set of values, right? And that those being the guiding decisions. And I think that's key. And I was answering a couple of questions on my story yesterday, and I've always said is like, what's most important is that you hire for good character and work ethic and values. And I think character and work ethic are a form of value. So like for me, the biggest thing is that if I'm bringing someone on, let's say for a business, and we'll talk about friendship and other stuff too. Let's think about business. Like what I really care about is that person wants to build this together with me, as far as like wants to put their heart and soul into the business. If you're a small company, you need that. I mean, if you're a large company that has like over 500 employees, like you don't need everyone's heart and soul every minute. But for a small company, which many people listening are probably starting right now, you need someone who's going to sit next to you and work their fucking ass off for you every day. And so for me, someone who's really hungry and has ridiculous work ethic will go further than someone who has awesome skills on a resume. Like to be truthful, because like those skills, like let's talk about like, writing good emails, doing maybe some copy, like, I don't know, designing, like literally ads, like you can literally learn all of that. Like skills can be acquired over time, but I think good character, work ethic, those things are just kind of innate, and you can't really teach that. I'm not really a big believer that I can tell someone, like, if someone's lazy, what can I really do? Because I get this question a lot. People are like, hey man, I have a buddy or a partner, co-founder, whatever, who's just lazy. They don't do their work. Like, what can I do? And I was like, you should probably think about like what the future is going to look like, because this is going to be hard. Like, how do you really motivate someone that has no interest in putting in effort? It's not something you can teach them. I can't give like, hey man, take this course. There's a course now how you cannot be lazy anymore. There is none.
Right.
If someone doesn't understand a skill set, I can teach it to them. So for me, I think a big part of it is, what values are you looking for that provides value to you? And does that person have those values? And then the rest of it, I really feel like it's overrated. That's why I'm not a big proponent of like looking at like resume and the way people look at it. They're like,
Yeah.
I don't really care about that, especially in the kind of work we do, man. Digital, like it's really not that important.
Yeah. Yeah. And when I first started talking to Seth, it kind of reminded me of myself.
And he's your first employee, right? Just for people who don't know.
Yep. First employee. And I found out he had another job. He was doing flooring. So he's working part-time for me to start, and then he was doing flooring. He's also going to school. So he's doing multiple things, and he's hustling. And that it kind of reminded me of myself. So I knew that the work ethic was there. He would have to, learn, different skills with what I needed him to do. But he's definitely grown in his position. And, when he started with me, he was only 19, and now he's 20. It's been 2 years. So when I look back at myself at 19, I probably didn't have two jobs. I wasn't working as hard as him, to be honest. So that's what really caught my attention, is that he has a harder work ethic than I did at his age. So that was something that I really took to heart, honestly. And he's grown since then, and it works really well between the two of us, honestly. He holds down the store when I'm not there. Like right now, he's there, and I have no worries about what's going on. He can take care of everything. So it's a good fit for right now.
Yeah, and I want to talk about that too, for why it's important in a business. So I've always been a big proponent is that your team is one of the most important things that you're going to have in your life. Like if you're going to solo, that's fine. But if you have a team, that's the most important thing. Or apart from like, if you have a business, you have market demand and then your team. So imagine if you have a bus right now, right? And so you got to go somewhere. But I'm more interested in finding out who's on my bus and then actually knowing the destination, how I'm going to get there. Like if I know who's on my bus and I know when they got to go in and out, I know I will figure out with the people on my bus how to get there, as opposed to me just like kind of blindly driving and thinking about the destination everywhere. If that, it kind of makes sense. So I'm really interested in like hiring disciplined people, and this is a cross thing, right? So like, what kind of people should you associate yourself with? And I think I'm not a micromanager. I don't like that at all.
No.
And all the companies that I let people do their own thing. And I'm not, people talk about a hierarchy, like you need to have the iron fist and the iron hand. I don't believe in that, just because the amount of resources you need in order to maintain hierarchy is extremely taxing. Look at the amount of like SOPs and like work documents you have at a large Fortune 500 companies. I worked at large law firms, man. Like their HR, like their books are that big. Like you can't, like, I don't want to deal with that at a small company level. So if you don't have strong hierarchy, and people ask me like, Prady, like, are you like a mean boss? Like, do you yell at your employees? Like, no, I don't do that. Because if you have disciplined people, you do, and if you have a disciplined culture, you don't need that much hierarchy. Like you do not need to rule with an iron fist. You actually don't. So I'm really interested to always hire people who have discipline in their life, like some sort of discipline. Like whether it's even going, I like people who work out because they go to the gym, and that's actually it's a big thing. You spend 2.5 hours or so, like training, eating, whatever, meal prep. Like for me, their show is discipline. So when I hire disciplined people, for me, I know my workload of like stuff that doesn't actually move the needle is going to be decreased. It's easier for me to have them work in my company or with me together, and I don't have to actually boss them. Because I actually don't. I know some people who are sick fucks. They love that. They love like the authoritarian stuff. I personally am not that kind of. I don't care about that. So for me, that's not important. For me, it's like, is the job getting done or not? And the more that I have to, hey man, is it getting done? Hey man, is it getting done? Dude, it's tiring. So I'd rather have someone who's super disciplined in my life, and that alone is going to be a massive difference. So hire disciplined people. That's my big takeaway here.
Yeah, and to that point too, if there's ever a mistake made, when Seth first started, obviously there was things that needed to be learned that I mentioned, and if he were to mess up on anything, I would always look back at it like, okay, what did I do wrong to put him in a failing position? Right. I need to adjust, what I've set up for him. That way he can succeed. So, there's really never a time where I'm mad or blaming him for anything. If if anything, I'm blaming myself for not putting him in a proper position to excel. So that's one thing I always try to keep in mind, that, it always falls on my shoulders with whatever goes wrong. So that's something that I try to focus on.
Yeah. So team's super important. Discipline, having the same values, like you said, taking responsibility if things don't go right. And the fact is that you're going to have to delegate, which is one thing we talked about in our first few episodes. I want to kind of pivot. I have a question sticker up I started yesterday, and I wanted to have some of the question stickers I'm going to answer. We'll listen to the next truth bomb because we're going to ask this. So one of the things that goes off with hiring, people also start talking about other types of relationships, friends, romantic kind of stuff. What is your thought process on that? I've never really spoken to you about that. Like, do you, how do you know like who to let into your life? Like, what kind of vetting have you done? Where have you come short? Where have you felt like you've made the right decisions? Like for young people that are, you say you're talking to a person right now, because the kid that asked me, he's a young guy and he's super eager. And obviously I believe that as someone who's young, because I used to be young, I'm still young, but if you make mistakes like with the wrong people, you spend time with the wrong relationships, whether it's friends or girls, whatever, you will ruin your business career or any career you want. So I want to save people from those mistakes. So that's why having you on as well. I want to hear from you, man. What are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, I mean, as far as like friendships with business, is that what the question was?
Yeah, friendships with business, even just friends generally, female relationships generally. Like, what should you look for? And yeah, no, I want to hear from you about that. Yeah, and even before, as a preface, that what I want to say about this is one of the biggest mistakes that we don't teach in our educational system, and I don't even think it's a role for schools to teach, kids, but even parents, something we need to teach kids how to vet better. There's one skill set about like, who do you let in your life, and like, what are the skills, what are the things you should look for? Because I think what we tell, and I was doing a podcast the other day, I was talking about this. You got to like the same music. You got to like the same band. Oh, you like the same sports team. And like, that is not for me a basis to form a relationship. I think that's where people go wrong. That's why I'm totally against like those like dating apps, like left, right. It's like, what do you know? Oh, we both like, I don't know, like Jerry Springer. Like, what the fuck? What does it matter? Like, we both like rap music. Right. So like, that's not a good basis to spend your emotional energy on for a long time. I just think it's the wrong way. And that's how we're taught in life. Match with people who you have a superficial interest with. It's a mistake. And I want to save people from those mistakes. So if you look back, and I want to hear from you about like, what are some of your best friends, best relationships? What are some of the things you look for?
Yeah. So as far as like friendships with business, when I got into the supplement space, I always heard that. Like I always heard, don't do business with friends. And like, it's like a typical saying. I'm like, well, I could probably make this work with this friend or this guy or whatever. And every time that I've tried so far, it's turned into a disaster. And I'm going through an issue right now where it was more of a friendship before a business relationship. And then, as we grew as friends, it turned into more of a business relationship, and it didn't work out.
Why do you think that? Like, what was it about that? Is it a friendship, or was it like what would make? Is it hard to actually have a good conversation because you are friends, or like?
Yeah, I mean,
honest, or?
I guess as friends, we were really close as friends, and then as the business relationship grew, there was more things that we didn't like about each other. So from a business standpoint, it was like he wanted to make this decision, and then I wanted to make another one, and we just butted heads on everything. And so far, through my short career in the supplement space, I have not had a relationship that I was a friend with that worked out. So I would advise against it, and that's what everybody's always told me too. So I haven't seen one work, honestly. But as far as like my personal relationships, friends, girlfriends, family, anything like that, especially starting a business or being an entrepreneur, you need to find somebody that's willing to accept you being sort of selfish in the sense that, you're going to spend the majority of your time on this business. It's most likely going to be the number one priority over friends, family, kids, or whatever it is. There's other things that need to be priorities, but most likely your business will be number one for the foreseeable future, especially when you're starting out. So it's very difficult to find somebody that's willing to deal with that. It's tough. But if you do, I feel like you can make it work, but you're going to have to sacrifice, a lot with that person. So it's going to be difficult, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult. I mean, to address like a couple of things, I think the first thing about friends and business. So I don't think the hard rule is just like if you're friends with someone, you can never do business with each other. I
No,
think
I
the
don't think so.
reason, yeah, the reason why you became friends is not enough for you to actually start a business relationship, if that makes sense, right? Because you might, I mean, have buddies from back in the day, like I grew up in Europe, so I'm really into soccer. So I
Mhm.
watch a lot of soccer. It's like my thing. So like we like the same soccer team, but like that's not a good business for us to tie our financial futures for the rest of our
Right.
lives together, which is really what a business relationship is like when you're a co-founder. Like, is the only agreement you'll ever sign with someone besides a marriage is your business partner. So
Yep.
like you never sign an agreement with another human in that form. So I just don't think that basis is there. So when you want to become business partners with your friends, ask yourself, like, what was the basis of our friendship in the first place? Like, why did we become friends? Always think about that. Like, what do we like about each other? Is it our company? Is it like because we're good? Like, you might have some friends you like doing some tequila shots with, I don't know, or drink some bourbon, I don't know. Like,
Right.
that's not a good basis though to translate into a business relationship where you're saying, okay, guys, we're going to both tie our financial interests here. And what our goal is together is to bring value to the marketplace. That's a totally different concept than like, hey, I'm fun at parties. Totally different thing. So I think that's where the issue really lies. That's when it comes to friends. Now, the second thing, I think, always in when you're in your path to success and greatness and stuff, like your goal is to become more valuable to the marketplace, right, as a business owner, right? And so sometimes, like when you are, let's say, in some sort of relationship with like even friends or sometimes family members, or other type of relationship, romantic stuff, sometimes their concept is about whether you provide value to them. And there is a conflict there because providing value to Jenna is here. Providing value for the marketplace might be here. So like if Jenna keeps pulling me away from the marketplace, like I'm never going to realize my potential as a successful entrepreneur. And so you have to be very, very, to be with someone who is massively passionate about their success. And for them, it's a zero-sum game that I want to be the best in my field, like an absolute the best. There is going to be no balance, and you have to be willing to give up the fact that they're not there to provide value to you. As fucked up as it may seem, they're not there for that. Their growth is about them providing value to the marketplace to such a level where like a billion people can find value in that person. Like all the top entrepreneurs that we talk about on this podcast, they provide value for at least 10 to 100 million people. So obviously the attention is not going to be like, can I buy you flowers every day, if that makes sense, right? And so I think I put it that way. It's like, hey, my goal right now, I'm a business owner, so I got to provide value to at least 10 million people if I want to be a multimillionaire, factually speaking. So I can't be busy providing value to you all the time. And there is where the conflict inherently lies. And I think you need to have a conversation also before. I feel like a lot of people who are friends or they're getting into any type of relationship, they don't speak to each other. They talk, they don't communicate. It's like, tell people where you're going, because most of this miscommunication happens. You started this startup, but now you don't have time for me. You started this business, but now it's taking time away from me. And it's like, you should have had a conversation about what's important for that person and talk about where you want and see your life to go. And I'm very big on that. I always communicate my vision to my friends and family and others so that they know where I'm going to go. And then they can kind of decide, like, is that on where Prady's going? Is that a place that I see myself in there? Yes or no? And if it's no, that's totally fine. But you need to communicate that with others. And like once someone has communicated with that with you, you got to respect it. And I think there's a miscommunication. There's also a lack of respect there.
Yeah, without a doubt. Communication obviously has to be a priority for you and your partner or whoever. And one thing that I wanted to refer back to for me in my experience was that with the partner that I was working with, it was like we had different values for the end goal. So I was more concerned about the customer and creating value, whereas the other person was concerned about a dollar, making a sale.
Yeah.
And that's just not how like I conduct business at all. And throughout our relationship, I didn't really see that side of that person. So you really need to find out, again, values. That should be a number one thing to look for. They need to have the same values. They have to align with yours. And if they don't, most likely it's not going to work. And you need to figure that out quickly before, you either start or get involved with that person, because it'll just become a messy situation the longer you stay in business with them.
Yeah. And here's how I think about, like, people ask, okay, so I want to communicate this to my friends, family, coworkers, whatever. So when I talk about values, my concept is that values need to have a destination in there too. So I want to become massively successful, and this is what it means for me to be massively successful. Because if I'm communicating this to my best friend or anyone else, and I'm saying, oh, they might think, okay, so Prady wants, I don't know, 2 cars. But that road is different than me saying I want 37 cars, right? Or I want to own a car company. I want to own Tesla. Right. Or like now it's like success is a value, but like what level of success? Like I work hard. One of my values is that I believe in work ethic. But for what? So I believe in work ethic, and for me, work ethic means working 24 hours a day where I never sleep. For someone else, it might be 10 hours a day. So you got to, if you meet someone for the first time, you got to explain to them your values, but you can't just say it. That's what people do. This is what I valued, but like, for what? Like, what is it really? Like, I value family. What does that mean? You're going to call your mom every day, or you're going to see her like 3 times a year? Like, I don't know what that means. So be very specific and have an end destination in mind. And I think in the absence, when you speak about values in just a general way, for me, what it says, it's like conflict avoidance. And let's talk, for example, about like male-female relationships. Like if you're dating someone, there is just this like where both people are just like trying to make the best impression with each other. It's just a lot like hiring, right? You hire an employee in the first few weeks, everyone's great, like during an interview. And what happens there is that the difficult conversations are just never had. And there's no conversation about like, where are we really going? And then all of a sudden after 4 years, like, oh man, we drifted apart. I was like, really? Because like you could have known that early on. So the goal of this podcast is like avoid these mistakes because they're going to be very costly. You can say whatever you want about, dude, I was in something for 5 years and I didn't care about this person. But it's like, you still spent 5 years with that person, whether you're cared about it or not. It still took out your energy. So I hear all these macho responses all the time. It doesn't matter. Which is like 6 years. Fuck it. I don't remember. Forget that person. I was like, but you still spent 5 or 6 years with them. So whether you agree with it or not, it still took out your energy. It still took your time. So why not take better decisions up front and have difficult conversations? Be willing to hear no. Like if someone says, I don't want to be your friend, I don't want to work with you, I don't believe in that idea. And I think in this willingness to get to yes, it's a very American concept, like getting to, there's a book I have about negotiation. It's called Getting to Yes. I think that's wrong. I don't like that concept. I was like, I don't want to get to yes. I want to get to what's right. And getting through what's right is different than getting to yes. If I just want to hear yes from a customer, yes from my boss for a promotion, yes from my girlfriend, you're going to get fucked because that yes is going to cost you. And you don't find out what it's going to cost you until you hit with a massive bill 5 years later when it's due, everything is due, principal, interest is due. Right. And so this is a big concept. Like you have to be willing to hear no. And that can only happen if you have the guts and the willingness to, be honest about that.
Yeah. Yeah. And to your point about communication too, that it made me think about this is, most people aren't entrepreneurs. Most people aren't business owners. So don't expect your loved ones or girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever to understand this lifestyle. So you really need to communicate how it is. And like you said, where you want to go, what your goals are, and explain them, because most people won't understand it and you shouldn't expect them to either. That's like one main takeaway that I wish I had learned early on. Like I expected people just to know like, hey, I'm working 16 hours a day or whatever. And, my girlfriend needed to know that. Like, I don't know. I wish I just would have learned it earlier to communicate better about, what I have in store for my life and where I want to go. But just don't expect people to understand it because they won't. That you need to tell them.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. We did we flirted with this concept a little bit on our first few episodes about just telling people where you're going to go, and you need to make that a big thing. And I've always thought about, like, I call this the flywheel effect. If you know, flywheel, it's like you start somewhere and just engine starts revving, and that's how success really works, right? So you have a flywheel effect, and I need every piece of like inertia and like physics to help me get that flywheel going. And one part of that is like, what am I spending my mental time on? Like, which is going to be relationships, networking, friends. Who am I texting on that? Who's on my WhatsApp? What am I seeing? Like, all that stuff needs to be surrounded and making that flywheel go quicker, like give it just more momentum. And so that's why, like, finding the right people that you're going to let in your life are going to help you get there. And part of communicating properly is if you tell the world, and you don't have to make it, I'm not telling people like go on Instagram and say you want to be, Mark Cuban tomorrow. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is the people close to you, you owe it to them say, hey, I made a decision. I am very interested in starting a new business venture, and this is how it's going to work, and this is where I see myself going with this business venture, and this is what it's going to take. And when you say that, some people will fall off and some people will be there. And your goal is to get those people in sync with you, because sometimes those people want to help you. They would love to help you. But if you didn't tell them, they have no clue. Like, they really don't know. I've been in that situation. I just don't say anything. And when I tell them, they're like super helpful. They want to help me. Like, I'll help you with this. I'll help you with your meals. I'll help you with training quicker. Like, I don't know, like whatever it is.
Right.
I've also noticed, like, the more successful I've become, like, people want to be there and like help with every small thing. And that's awesome, because I need that help. I need places, I need to save my time. I need help with that kind of stuff. So, but if I never tell anyone, how can I mobilize everyone to help me get there? So my concept always is, if you say you want to be successful, you come to Shawn and say, oh, man, Shawn, I want to be like you. I want to be successful, or whatever. My goal, my question always to those people is, have you mobilized every single tool in your life right now, like all of it, in order to help you get there? Because if it's not all mobilized, you're not firing on all cylinders. And that starts with the most smallest thing in your day, whether your house is clean, like who are you talking to on your chat?
Right.
What are you seeing on Instagram? Like, everything needs to be mobilized for success. And I've seen that with highly successful people. They just cut everything out, and the whole world, even from, like, I was watching a Kai Green video. He's a prominent bodybuilder, and he talked about how he cares about the colors of the walls in the gym. He's like, if it's not the right color, I don't like training. It fucks with my training. So he wants a specific color at the gym. And it's kind of messed up, but like, yes, why not? Be that granular. So is everything mobilized for your success? Yes or no? And if it's not, you're leaving things on the table. And that's, something that why we're talking about this topic, specifically about the people that you have in your life, because they form a huge part of your life. And so you have to mobilize them.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that about Kai Green, because there's like an ugly ass green wall at my gym, and it pisses me off. Like, I like just neutral colors, and like, if it throws my mood off, it really fucks with my lift, honestly.
Yep.
So it's kind of interesting that he feels that way too. But yeah, I mean, you only have so much mental capacity for each day. So if you're, wasting any of that energy on, whatever you see on Instagram or anything that you just mentioned that's not aligned with your goals, you're going to become less and less effective throughout the day. So you really need to, like you said, mobilize all the tools that you have. That way you're not wasting any energy, because like I said, you only have so much productive time during a day. And that's for everybody. Some people may be more productive longer than others, but everybody has a mental cap per day. At least that's how I think about it. So I think that's a very good, message to take home, is really look at everything you're doing throughout the day, and have you, really critiqued everything to where you're using all the tools to your advantage.
100%. So some really good takeaways there, Shawn. So a couple of things I got from this podcast is vetting is really important. It's going to be a theme of this podcast going forward for a long time. You got to vet the right people. Think about who you spend your time with. You already know that. And then think about values, and be less skill based. Think less about like musical taste and stuff. That will get you through a dinner conversation. It will get you through coffee. It will get you through a couple of shots of gin, but it won't get you through a life. All right. Like, it's not going to get you through life, and life is long. Like, if you want to have a business, hopefully you're building a business that is built to last. And I always say that if you find a business and it works out, like if it works out, this business works out, it's probably going to be the only thing you ever do in your life. Factually speaking, think of all the business owners that are super successful. They don't do anything else. They never work another job ever in their life. They don't do another business. This is it. So like, you have to like it, and you have to build it on values that are there for the long term. Same thing with like something like a marriage or something like that. I see people, I met this person on Tinder. It's like, okay, but is that enough for you to spend your life with? And these are fundamental questions that you must ask yourself. And I think a big part that we don't speak about a lot in this day and age is about getting things quick, making money fast, driving Lambos when you're 18. It doesn't matter, because the real concept is like, what I'm interested in is who's going to last. What are the companies, even in our space, in the supplement space, who's going to last? And you want to build businesses that are built to last. And for that, you need to follow values. And those values, which is something that you added and I want to add as well, they need to have a definitive time and a goal attached to them. And that is a value that you must communicate to everyone so you can mobilize them so they can help you succeed in life. So those are some of the takeaways from my end. I don't know, Shawn, if you have anything else to add to that.
Yeah, actually, I have like a parting question for you that I wanted to get your thoughts
let's do
on.
it, man. Yeah.
So you want to look for people that have the same core values as you when you're hiring or vetting. What do you say when people, there's like an old saying, like, he's everything I'm not, or she's everything I'm not. He completes me. You know what I mean? So like, what do you think about hiring somebody that has like the holes that you have, like in your business repertoire or something like that? Maybe my employee Seth is good at this and I'm not good at that. So like, is that something you should look for, like when you're hiring, or do you think you just want to have somebody that's similar minded, similar values and things like that?
Yeah, I think you need to have someone who has the same values as you, but if you're starting, for example, a business, but you need to hire for someone who has the skill sets that you don't have, or they can learn those skill sets that you don't have, which is a totally different concept. Because I think some of you and people conflate it. I don't think you are, but they'll say, but like, you just that wouldn't just have the same person. I was like, no, don't. I don't want a clone, really. I don't want a clone of mine. I don't want to like marry myself. I don't want that. Like, you want someone who has things that you don't have, but those are not values. So if you have a value for like extreme work ethic, and I demand that in my business, we need to have someone who is like, this is it. Like, they'll work 20 hours a day and I work 20 hours a day. But so they do like all the marketing and I do all the vendor relationships and business development. That's better than saying we're both going to do business development for 20 hours. Like, that makes no sense. So I agree. I think you should hire for your weaknesses, right? But your strength should be, both of you guys should have the same values. And I think we can go about it on another episode too, but values, I think people don't understand really what that really is. I think it's misrepresented. People think it's about some like personality traits or like what you like and don't like. And I think that is incorrect. And we should definitely dissect it in another episode, because like values are so important. Yeah. So I want people to understand really what we mean by that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think over the next couple episodes, we can, kind of break it into a couple parts and address like a few topics within this topic. I think that would bring a lot of value to our listeners.
Awesome. All right, Shawn. So we are concluding this episode. You can find us pretty much everywhere. Watching us on YouTube, on Instagram. You can find us on all the podcast channels. If you like what you're listening to, leave us a review. I know a lot of people have been leaving us reviews. That's great. And we will be back for more, Shawn.
Cool. All right, man. I'm looking forward to it. Talk to you next time.
Awesome, man. Bye-bye.